The mouth of the cave gaped before them, a jagged wound in the earth. Sarah, ever the leader, grinned, her excitement palpable.
Ready for adventure? Ben, ever the pragmatist, checked his headlamp. Let's just be careful. Jen shuddered, pulling her jacket tighter.
Do we have to? Chris, always eager for a thrill, slapped Ben on the back.
Come on, man. Where's your sense of adventure? Mark, quiet and observant, scanned the tree line, feeling a prickle of unease. The woods were silent, holding their breath. His unease intensified as they stepped into the cave, the sunlight vanishing behind them. The darkness was absolute, swallowing the light from their headlamps. Sarah, undeterred, led them deeper into the maw of the unknown.
The passage narrowed, forcing them to move single file. Sarah, ever optimistic, pointed out the intricate rock formations.
Look at that, guys. Isn't it amazing? Ben, ever practical, pointed out the potential dangers. Watch your step, these rocks are slippery. Jen, her anxiety growing, jumped at every sound.
Did you hear that? Chris, ever the jokester, laughed it off.
Relax, Jen. It's probably just bats. They continued deeper, the silence broken only by their footsteps and the drip, drip, drip of water.
The cave opened into a vast cavern, the ceiling disappearing into impenetrable darkness.
Whoa, Sarah grinned, her headlamp illuminating her awestruck face.
This is incredible. Ben, ever cautious, scanned the cavern. Let's stick together. Jen shivered, pulling her jacket closer.
It feels different in here. Mark nodded, sharing her unease. The air felt charged, electric with an unseen energy. He could hear it now, a faint whispering that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. It was a low, guttural sound, like the murmurings of some ancient and malevolent being. Mark felt a cold dread grip his heart. Something was terribly wrong.
They pressed on, the whispers growing louder, morphing into distinct growls. Jen stumbled, her eyes wide with terror.
We need to go back, now. But Sarah, driven by an insatiable curiosity, pressed on.
Almost there. I can feel it. Ben, ever the voice of reason, tried to intervene. Sarah, this is crazy. We need to turn back. But Sarah was already moving, her headlamp beam disappearing into the darkness ahead. The cavern floor sloped downward, leading to a chasm that seemed to swallow the light. Mark could feel it now, a presence lurking in the darkness below. They had stumbled into something primal, something that existed long before humans first crawled from the primordial ooze. And now something had taken notice.
A shape began to emerge from the chasm, immense and shadowy, its edges blurring in and out of existence. It pulsed with a sickly green light, casting grotesque shadows that danced on the cavern walls.
What is that? They huddled together, their headlamps useless against the encroaching darkness. Jen whimpered, her eyes squeezed shut, her fingers digging into Mark's arm. Ben swore under his breath, his face pale and drawn. Only Sarah seemed unafraid, her gaze fixed on the monstrous form rising from the abyss. It towered over them, a grotesque parody of life, its form shifting and changing like smoke consumed by fire. Mark felt a primal fear grip him, a terror that transcended language. This was a creature of nightmare, a being of pure chaos and darkness. The creature let out a sound that was both a roar and a shriek, a sound that seemed to tear at the very fabric of reality. And then, everything went silent.
The creature lunged, its maw a gaping abyss of razor-sharp teeth. Jen screamed, a high-pitched wail that echoed through the cavern. Ben shoved her back, pushing her towards Chris.
Get her out of here. Mark watched in horror as the creature bore down on them. He saw Sarah, her face illuminated by a strange inner light, step forward. She moved with a grace that belied the terror of the situation, her eyes locked on the monstrous being. She raised her hands, her fingers tracing strange patterns in the air. The creature hesitated, its attention drawn to her movements. "Run!" Mark grabbed Jen and pulled her along, following Chris and Ben as they scrambled back up the slope. The creature's roar of rage echoed through the cavern.
They ran until their lungs burned and their legs screamed for mercy. The darkness behind them pressed in, the creature's rage a tangible presence urging them onward. They stumbled and fell, scrambling to their feet, driven by a primal fear that transcended exhaustion. The narrow passage opened before them, a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness. They squeezed through, their headlamps casting dancing shadows on the damp walls. They emerged into the sunlight, blinking against the sudden brightness. The world spun, the familiar trees and rocks seeming alien and strange after the darkness of the cave. They collapsed onto the soft earth, gasping for breath.
"We need to get help." Mark nodded, his gaze fixed on the dark mouth of the cave.
They made their way back to town, their silence heavy with unspoken words. The authorities arrived, their questions met with confused and fragmented answers. The search party returned empty-handed, their faces grim. The official report cited a cave-in, a tragic accident. No mention was made of the creature, of the whispers in the dark, of the sacrifice that had saved their lives. Life went on, but it was a different kind of life. They were forever changed, marked by the darkness they had encountered. Jen never fully recovered, her dreams haunted by the creature's roar. Chris, once reckless and carefree, became withdrawn and silent. They knew with chilling certainty that the cave still waited, a silent testament to the horrors that lay hidden in the shadows.